Oh, honey, the faintest breath of cedar just drifted through my kitchen screen, and mercy me, it whisked me straight back to a rain-slick Tuesday in the Blue Ridge, October of 2018. Before smartwatches bossed our pulses and Earl still swore a wilderness getaway could patch the cracks we kept tiptoeing around. I'm Julia May Carter. Most folks down Charleston way simply call me Miss Julie. 72 come last spring, mother of 3, grandmother of 6 bright firecrackers, alto in the Riverside Chapel Choir, and veteran of more county fair cake stalls than I can rightly tally. This evening I was steeping peppermint tea, minding the drizzle shivering on the windows, when that cedar note curled in like an old hymn and stirred up something that hasn't let me sleep easy in years. The smell of wet cedar was the first thing I noticed when Earl eased our maroon pickup off the paved road and onto a gravel snake that climbed toward a cabin he promised would be our very own ark. I remember rubbing the fog from the windshield, humming Amazing Grace under my breath, believing, bless my stars, that he'd chosen those mountains just to hear my voice echo through the pines. And, sweetheart, if this porch swing storytelling warms you even a smidge, would you be a dear and click that little thumbs up so I know I'm not just talking to the crickets? Back then, I thought a creaky rocker, a stack of hymnals, and Earl's cocoa-stained thermos were the makings of peace. Now I know different. The blue-gray mist that morning clung to the peaks like a prayer shawl, and the lake below blinked pale silver, half hid by firs. Earl's eyes, sharp as quilting needles, kept flitting to the rearview mirror, though there weren't another soul on that road save us and a forestry truck way off in the distance. He squeezed my hand, said the rain would draw us close as bark to trunk, and I believed him because wives of 52 years are good at believing, even when the map is missing, the cell tower's out of reach, and the router he'd forgotten. To plug in back home feels like a small, odd bruise you don't notice till it blooms purple. Tonight, that same cedar breath twines with my peppermint steam, and suddenly I taste damp wool blankets, hear the tin roof complain, see Earl, hunched in lantern light, sharpening a blade he claimed was dull as dishwater. Funny how one scent can yank the latch on a memory barn you nailed shut years ago. You may ask why an old gal keeps poking a wound that's half-healed. Because some stories never settle. They flutter at the edge of the porch light until you open the screen door and let them in. My children suspect something happened up there. They've seen the way my hands tremble when thunder sits on the ridge, but they've never heard the full-blooded tale. You, however, clicked play, poured your presence into my little kitchen, and for that kindness you deserve every truth I've got, even the ones that still rattle my teacup. So pull your chair closer, sugar, and listen for the water on those cabin steps, the hush of shutters closing, the odd silence when a landline should have rung. I'll unspool this week hour by hour, because if a clear memory is a blessing, a cloudy one can be a warning, and I reckon both are worth sharing. You might taste the damp wood smoke on every sentence I speak tonight, because the past is still smoldering in the grate, just waiting for me to stir the coals and send up sparks tall enough for you to see from wherever you're sitting. Darlin' friends, oh, honey, if you'll lend me your ears for a little spell, I'll carry you back to dusty July 1955, when my pigtails were straw blonde and the Canoe River shimmered beyond Grandma Thornton's tomato rows. I was Julia May then, 14 and barefoot, patting the porch of our clapboard farmhouse, chasing the smell of churned butter and the promise of lime sherbet if I'd finish snapping beans before the C&O bridge whistle called supper. Morning began with Mama humming "I'll Fly Away" and Daddy reading the farm report like scripture, tallying every hopeful drop of rain. Summers were stitched together by tin roof storms, mason jars cooling on windowsills, and the gospel crackle of WLC on the radio. Folks around Coal Branch worked hard, loved loud, and believed a potluck could mend anything short of a broken leg. And mercy me, I believed it too. School let out Memorial Day and didn't whisper back until Labor Day, so my hours were open for calf feedings, blackberry picks, and choir practice in a small Whitechapel. Sister Louise swore I had a voice like satin ribbon. I belted hymns until the windows rattled. Singing felt like a ticket somewhere shining, maybe Wheeling, maybe Nashville, though no girl from our holler had ever gone that far. Still, I dreamed big and pure, the way you do when the worst thing you've misplaced is a library book. Evenings were candle flies, croquet on crabgrass, grandpa's porch stories, and me believing kindness was the richest currency a soul could spend. I saved egg money nickels for penny candy, convinced good deeds roll back around like trains on a loop. People always return, I'd whisper as fireflies blinked in agreement, and never wondered what shape they'd take when they did. I met Earl Carter at the county fair the summer I turned 16, tall, hay in his hair, grin bright as midway lights. He asked me onto the Ferris wheel and, bless my stars, I said yes before my knees caught on. From the top we saw the valley spread like a patchwork quilt. Earl pointed down and told me where he'd fix engines, plant peaches, build a porch swing strong enough for 2 old souls someday. My heart kept time with that wheel, and I carried the memory home like a secret postcard. Those growing up years tasted of red clay dust and porch swing promises, of believing the world was safe, and boys like Earl were born knowing how to shelter a songbird heart. I didn't yet see the shadows beyond the lantern glow, nor suspect every sweet chorus hides a minor key. I only knew tomorrow would arrive wrapped in honeysuckle, and any sadness could be lifted if I sang loud and loved study. I know better now, but I hold that girl's faith gentle, because a clear memory is a blessing, and a cloudy one is the warning label. Sundays found us crammed into Daddy's Ford Custom line, windows down, dresses flapping like flags, rolling toward Grandma's where chicken cooled on newspaper and cousins argued over the last deviled egg. Those tables taught me that crowded laughter can hold off grief, at least until the dishes are done. Earl started showing up then, shyly volunteering to milk before sunup or patch a fence board, courting me in the language mountain boys learn from stubborn soil. I pinned his friendship to my hope chest, sure I would never splinter. Oh, honey, the moment that steered our river's current came one peach bright dawn in early March of 2014, when the robins had only just dared a song and I was stirring grits in a saucepan that kept sighing like an old screen door. Earl shuffled into the kitchen, pale as biscuit dough, pressed one trembling hand to his chest, and gave a soft, puzzled, well, bless it all, before folding like last year's scarecrow onto the linoleum. Mercy me, my spoon clattered. My heartbeat leapt clear to my ears, and I couldn't have told you why the world shrank to the size of that single gasp, but there it was, quick as a thunderclap. I'd never dialed 911 in my life, yet my fingers flew, and within minutes a paramedic named Toby Wyatt, red hair, freckles, kindness pouring off him like noonlight, knelt beside Earl, talking sugar slow while wires bloomed across my husband's chest. In that split second, watching Toby's calm hands glide over the man I'd loved since Ferris wheel summers, I felt something shift deep down where a woman keeps her bedrock certainties. Earl's eyelids flickered, and I caught a glimmer of fear so raw it pricked my own lungs. But mingled underneath was something sharper, darker, like a nail catching on silk. They loaded him into the ambulance, lights spinning ruby over our dogwoods, and I remember clutching the doorway, whispering, "Hold on now, Julia May, hold on," though my knees were jelly and my faith felt like thin broth. 5 days in ICU stitched Earl back together, yet he never quite set straight. The doctors called it a mild infarction, but what lodged in him was more than clogged arteries. It was a hush, a secret calculation behind his storm gray eyes. When they wheeled him out, He squeezed my fingers too tight and told the nurses, "She's my compass. Couldn't find north without her." Yet I sensed the needle shimmying off true. At home his tenderness turned watchful. He'd hover while I counted diabetes pills, double-lock the shed, unplug the router at sundown to save on ghost electricity, and whenever the kids phoned, he'd answer first, voice butter-soft but brisk, as though guarding a gate. I chalked it up to post-scared jitters. 52 years of marriage teaches you to let a man gather his pride, but some nights I'd wake to find him perched at the window, studying the moonlit yard, like a soldier on perimeter. Each time I asked what weighed on him, he'd smile, that sweet Earl smile, and say, "Just grateful to still be here, Julie girl." Still, a widow's chill brushed my spine even while he breathed beside me, and I couldn't explain why my heart beat faster each time the phone rang or a car slowed near our mailbox. Then, one late August afternoon, Earl spread a county map across the kitchen table, knife point tracing the Blue Ridge like a treasure route, and he said, "Let's take one last adventure before the frost. Just you and me, no phones, no fuss, the way it used to be." His voice quavered, hopeful yet urgent, and against that longing I laid the memory of Toby Wyatt's calm hands and the way Earl's eyes had flashed something secret in the aftershock. I felt the old porch swing promise tug, but also a ripple of dread I couldn't name, and that, sweetheart, is the hinge on which everything turned. A husband's near miss with heaven, a stranger's steady touch, and a wife's sudden knowing that kindness alone might not keep every storm outside the door. Tell me, dear listener, have you ever trusted love so deeply that you ignored the shiver crawling up your own backbone? If you felt that tremor, go on and share below. I reckon we've all got a moment that changed our map. Oh, honey, the mountain light was thin as dishwater when I thumbed this little tape deck on. And bless my stars, I can't rightly say if it's the cloud cover or the worry sitting under my ribs that's dimming everything, but something's surely gone sideways. Earl just finished latching the outside shutters against the wind, he said, though the air's quieter than a church nursery, and I couldn't shake the scrape of those hinges closing out the day. It sounded like a lid sliding over a box. He gave me that patient smile, the one folks use on children asking too many questions, then kissed my forehead and told me to stay cozy. Land sakes, I almost believed him, yet when his boots tromped off the porch I felt my jaw tighten the way it did during the Cuban Missile broadcast back in '62. That prickle that says something unseen just shifted and a body best pay attention. I walked the cabin slow as syrup, looking for the landline Earl promised would be here. Mercy me, not a dial tone in sight. The single plug by the hall table is empty, a pale square on the cedar paneling where dust outlines a phone that was once there but isn't now. My stomach flipped like cornbread on a hot skillet. I opened the kitchen drawers next, pretending I wanted a tea towel, but really I was hunting reassurance. Instead, I found Earl's old buck knife, freshly honed, edge catching the lantern glow tucked beneath the flour sack dishcloths. He's a farmer. Sharp blades shouldn't scare me, yet my fingers trembled something awful. I shoved the drawer shut before reasoning could scold my nerves. Outside, the lake looked pinned under pewter sky. No ripples, no ducks, just stillness thick enough to taste. Inside, my breath echoed off bare rafters. I thought of calling our eldest, Ruthann, to tell her we'd arrived, but of course there's no cell service either. Earl said the mountains would make it tricky, which seemed romantic at breakfast and downright reckless by lunch. I'm ashamed how quickly fear crowded out faith. All morning I've heard Mama's voice saying, "Julia May, a good wife trusts her husband," but Mama never met post-infarction Earl with his sudden need for locks and quiet. Part of me wants to march out, demand answers, but another part, small and shivering, worries I'll spark a fuse I can't smother. We've weathered droughts, funerals, teenage rebellions. Why does this feel different? Maybe because the hurt is still only a question, and questions can grow teeth in the dark. I keep replaying that ambulance ride 4 years back, the way Earl clutched my hand between heart monitor beeps and promised he'd never leave me. Now he's the one sealing doors while the sky stays calm. I swallow guilt like sour milk for even doubting him, yet doubt lingers, sticky as sorghum, whispering that love shouldn't need this many bolts. My only comfort is the hymn drifting through my mind. Yeah, though I walk through the valley, but even King David had a staff. All I have is this recorder and the memory of phone lines that worked. Do I confront Earl tonight, risk his temper and my own shame? Or do I wait, gather proof like breadcrumbs, and pray I'm overreacting? That's the knot twisting tighter by the minute. No neighbor within miles, no ranger station till the forestry truck rolls by next Thursday, and the road down the switchback is muddy enough to spin a mule. I tell myself our children would roar in here like cavalry if they sensed real danger, but how will they sense it if my voice can't reach them? Lord help me, I feel 12 again, hiding behind the smokehouse when Daddy's temper flared, knowing silence ain't safety, but words might fan the flames. I wish I could pour this fear into a choir song, let the harmony carry it off. Yet here I sit with only the rain starting to tap the tin roof. Too soft to blame yet loud enough to mask footsteps. I'll stash this tape under the mattress once I'm done. If anything tilts further wrong, maybe these words will testify that Julia May Carter wasn't blind, just battling the storm inside and out. Oh gracious, Earl's coming back in boots on the porch, key in the lock, so I'll sign off now. Lord grant me wisdom. My next breath may need it. Oh, honey, I pray these magnetic strips don't fail, because the breath I'm fixing to trap in here may be the last one that belongs wholly to me. The cabin is dark save one kerosene tongue flickering on the counter, rain drilling the roof like 1,000 fretful fingers, and in that jittery glow Earl has just shown me a face I've never met in 52 years of calling his name. An hour ago I crept to the pantry hunting cocoa to steady my nerves and instead found the floorboard that thunked wrong. Curiosity pried it up, and there, nestled like a sleeping viper, lay a metal cash box, combination already spun open. My own will folded inside with today's date inked neat as a church ledger, signature line filled, notarized, as though I had already stepped across Jordan. The sight knocked the wind clean out of my lungs. Everything in me paused, the way the world paused the morning the towers fell, the way our kitchen clock paused when Daddy passed and Mama forgot to wind it, just a stunned silence where seconds normally march. I remember thinking, in the hollow between heartbeats, that kindness was supposed to circle back, that boys who promised porch swings didn't plan goodbyes without you. My knees puddled, but fear pumped ice through my veins, and I slid the will into my apron, floorboard back, lockbox hidden, mind racing faster than any hymn tempo. I meant to wait, gather proof, but Earl's boots thundered into the hallway. He'd gone out for kindling, yet his coat was dry, eyes sharp as a hawk's. He noticed the pantry door ajar, and something inside him, mercy, patience, maybe love, snapped like a brittle twig. He crossed the room in 3 strides, seized my wrist hard enough to spark stars behind my eyelids, and whispered, not shouted, whispered, which is somehow worse, Julie girl, I'm plumb tired of pretending. You're not walking out of these hills alive. Time split right there. I tasted iron, felt the rasp of his calluses, heard every storm we'd weathered together clatter to the floor like dropped china. My firstborn's birth cry, our son's flood-draped coffin, the choir risers we shared, every shining shard flashed and vanished. Shock pinned me silent, but underneath rose a fierce, clear bell of survival I didn't know I still possessed. I realized in a single, frozen instant that I was not the frail woman Earl believed he could shepherd into the dark. I was the farm girl who hauled milk pails at dawn, the mother who buried a child and kept singing, the granddaughter of women who planted hope in hard clay. I yanked free skin burning where his fingers had bruised, and the lamp flame flared, lighting the knife he'd left on the table, the same blade I'd found in the kitchen drawer 2 days prior. For one suspended breath the room held only rain, kerosene hiss, and the wild metronome of my heart. Then I understood what I stood to lose. My grandchildren's birthdays, pumpkin pies cooling on winter ledges, the sunrise hymns I've yet to sing. In that dawning, I also understood what Earl had already lost: trust, maybe mercy, and that morning could wait until I was safe. I spoke his name, calm as a lullaby, told him I needed my evening insulin, asked him please to fetch the cooler from the porch while I straightened the lamp. He hesitated, old habits die slow, nodded, stepped outside, and that sliver of absence was my miracle. I slit the deadbolt, shoved the oak hutch against the door, fingers sure now, pulse steady with purpose, survive, signal the children, live to forgive or not forgive later, but live. As I record this, Earl's pounding on the boards, thunder answering overhead, and every boom begs the question I never dreamed I'd ask. After a lifetime of love, what do we owe someone who decides our story should end before we're ready to lay down the pen? Oh, honey, the hush after a storm can rattle louder than thunder, and right now this cabin is so still I can hear the lampwick breathe. Rain finished its tantrum an hour ago, the roof quit dripping, and Earl, chained downstairs with his own clatter-trap bear chain, has fallen into a sleep that sounds more like grinding teeth than rest. I'm up here in the loft, back propped against the cedar planks, blanket wrapped round my shoulders though the fire's gone dull, trying to reckon with the emptiness settling over me like wood ash. Mercy me, just 2 nights back I was fussing over Coco and hymn selections, and now every creak of these boards reminds me that even 52 years of wedding photos can turn brittle in a blink. The lantern throws skittish shadows, and in them I keep seeing echoes. Earl polishing the pickup, Earl tracing the blue ridge on that map, Earl whispering promises that felt as safe as sunrise. Each memory now floats like a paper boat on black water, handsome but sinking, and I'm left clinging to scraps, wondering whether the good years were ever mine to keep or only rented. I keep circling the same question like a hound on a scent. How did love sewn so tight unravel without me feeling the first tug? Maybe I did feel it, those late-night window watches, the router yanked from the wall, but I braided each warning into patience because a wife my age knows storms blow over if you just hold the porch rail and pray. Tonight proved some tempests aim to sweep you clean off the ridge. My right wrist throbs where his fingers bruised the bone. I press a cold mason jar to it and whisper Psalm 23 the way Mama taught me, slow and steady, trying to lay each syllable like a stepping stone across dark water. The words still comfort, but their echoes changed. I hear the valley of the shadow clearer now, feel its chill closer to the skin. Faith used to be my quilt against uncertainty. This evening it feels more like a single thread I'm working to knot, determined not to let it slip through numb fingers. I won't pretend bravery tastes sweet. It's bitter as aspirin on a dry tongue. Yet in the hollowness I also sense a faint, clean space where old assumptions got blasted away, a clearing where something truer might take root if I tend it. I'm not sure who I'll be when dawn pries open these shutters, but it won't be the woman who kept quiet to keep the peace. Maybe I'll be stitched with new seams, sterner, yes, but still soft in the middle where grandbabies fit their heads. For now I listen to the cabin breathe and weigh what's left. My voice a battered hymn, a sliver of moon sneaking through warped boards, and a pocket-sized GPS that, thank the Lord, still blinks coordinates. Loss sits heavy, trust toppled, marriage cracked, but I'm alive, and aliveness, even raw, is a mercy worth pocketing. I've decided the world beyond these walls still wants me, even if the man beside me forgot why. When daylight crawls up the ridge, I'll slide that GPS message to Ruth Ann, tuck this tape beneath the quilt, and ready myself for whatever comes, sheriff sirens, or my own 2 legs down the muddy switchback. The Julia May who leaves this loft will know danger wears familiar faces, but she'll also know her own spine holds more iron than fear expected. If you're listening later, sugar, remember this. Silence after calamity isn't just emptiness. It's the chamber where you choose what music will fill the next breath. And right now, in this hush thick as molasses, I'm humming the first tremor of a new song. Oh, honey, daylight finally spilled over the ridge like sweet cream, and the first thing it touched was that blinking little GPS puck I'd tucked beneath my pillow, still alive, still pulsing a red promise that someone, somewhere, could follow the breadcrumbs home to me. I pressed the on button with fingers that shook like cold spoon handles, whispered, "Lord, guide the signal," and spoke straight into its mic. "Ruth Ann, sugar, coordinates coming your way. Check your voicemail. And if you love your old mama, hurry." Then I hit send and felt my heart wing out across the miles on wings of lithium and prayer. The moment might have been no bigger than a sparrow's heartbeat, yet it cracked open a sliver of sky inside my chest. Hope, rusty from disuse, stretched and chirped. Downstairs Earl rattled his chain, cussing under breath low enough for the angels alone to take note, but the sound no longer owned the air the way it had at dawn. Now the cabin echoed more with possibility than dread. I shuffled to the window, shoulders sore, wrist bruised violet, and saw the storm's wreckage strewn across the drive. Branches, shingles, one whole cedar split and toppled like a felled giant. Yet through the wreck I spied a flash of orange far down the switchback. The forestry truck, earlier than its usual Thursday crawl, easing uphill with caution lights blinking against the mist. That sight lit a spark so bright I nearly wept. I yanked the quilt from the bed, draped it over the loft rail, waved it like a revival banner, and sang the first line of Amazing Grace just to hear courage in my own voice. The truck paused, door opened, and a figure stepped out. Couldn't see details, but the way they shaded their eyes told me my signal flag wasn't wasting its effort. Mercy me, optimism swelled like bread dough. I scurried back to Earl's med kit, found fresh insulin, jabbed my thigh quick as a nurse, no fainting today, and for the first time since stepping into these mountains I thought of tomorrow with color instead of gray. Funny how one small deed, one button pressed, can tilt the scales. A message launched, a quilt waved, a song sung ragged but loud. I felt the cabin's weight shift, too. The timbers that had seemed like bars now felt like ribs protecting a beating chance. My mind leapt ahead to coffee perking in a sheriff's office, to my daughters hugging me hard enough to bruise, to my telling grandchildren the story of great-grandma's bear chain escape and teaching them that bravery sometimes whispers instead of roars. Even Earl's groans downstairs couldn't sour that vision. Pity threaded through my anger. Poor, broken man who mistook possession for love, and I realized my future did not have to drag his chain behind it. The new sense blooming in me wasn't just survival, it was a call to share, to make this hurt worth something. Maybe speak at church circles about warning signs, maybe volunteer at the women's shelter Ruthin supports. The word purpose fluttered like a moth around a porch bulb, and I let it land. I straightened my shoulders, tied my hair with a scrap of pillowcase, and for good measure slipped Earl's sharpened buck knife into my apron, not from fear now, but from plain mountain practicality. Never know when a strong blade might free a body or cut a rope. Outside, tires crunched closer. I took one long breath of cedar-washed air and thought, this is my second sunrise. and I intend to see every color it carries. If that isn't worth hanging on, what is? Oh, honey, the sheriff's cruiser taillights have melted into the dawn. The medic's chatter is a whisper on the breeze, and I'm sitting alone on this porch step, dawn's lavender light pooling over the shattered cedar like a benediction, holding Earl's old Blue Ridge map in my lap and a pair of rusty sewing shears in my good hand. Just an hour ago they wheeled him off, half-conscious, wrists cuffed for everyone's safety, and while their tires crunched away, I felt my heart sink and rise in the same beat, the way a hymn drifts low before soaring on the refrain, and right then I knew the choice left to me wasn't about him, or the deputies, or even what the neighbors might whisper over pie-cooling racks, but about what pieces of this night I would let root inside my bones. So I smoothed the map flat, traced the serpentine road he'd once sketched like a promise, and for every memory that turned sour, his whisper in the loft, the click of chains, the angry ripple in his eyes, I let the scissors snip a clean, deliberate line. Slice by slice the ridge lost its shape until only the lake remained, blue pencil shimmering like forgiveness itself. I folded that scrap into the size of a postage stamp, kissed it, mercy me, tears splashing the ink, and dropped it into the embers of the fireplace where it curled, sparked, and drifted upward in a hush of gray feathers. In that moment a great sigh left my chest, the same weary breath I'd been holding since the paramedics first patched his failing heart 4 years ago. And I understood, as surely as I'm breathing peppermint air, that I can love the man we once were without hauling the wreckage of who we became. I won't pretend the hurt is gone, my wrist is still purple, and my trust will wear a splint for a spell, but I choose, the sunrise, to let grace be the louder voice. I choose to keep singing, to tend my garden, to bake pumpkin pies that smell like better seasons ahead, and when the choir director calls asking if I'm up to solo Amazing Grace at Thanksgiving, I'll say yes, because a backbone strengthened by fear can study a song like nobody's business. I also choose to forgive myself for missing the signs, for rubbing doubt smooth when it should have raised a splinter. I am, after all, only human, stitched with hope and blind spots in equal measure, and from here on I'll honor both with gentleness. Earl will face his reckonings in hospital rooms and courtrooms far from this porch, and whether he ever asks my pardon is between him and the good Lord, but my heart this morning feels lighter than any gavel. Before the deputies left, one handed me a copy of their report. I set it inside the house, not to forget, but to file under lesson instead of lament, and I locked the cabin door behind me, not out of fear, but to mark the threshold where darkness stops and daylight starts. I have decided, darling listeners, to keep walking forward, step by step, giving every sunrise a fair chance to color my world, and if sorrow tries to court me again, I'll greet it like an old acquaintance, offer a cup of tea, and see it out by dusk. So here's my confession, clear as mountain air. I choose to live, no grudges, no regrets, just breath after brave breath, and if grace can stretch enough to cover me, well, bless my stars, it can surely stretch enough to cover you too. Oh, honey, dawn is just licking the treetops pink, and I'm perched on the cabin's front step with a styrofoam cup of deputy station coffee cooling in my hand, Earl's Blue Ridge map spread across my knees, and Grandma Thornton's sewing shears balanced like a verdict. An hour ago the ambulance grumbled down the serpentine road carrying the man I spent 52 years loving, and in the hush that followed, the hush that always comes after strangers pack away the sirens and clipboards, I felt a title. Pull inside that said, plain as scripture, Julia May. Today you choose what stays and what goes. So I unfolded that map, tracing each switchback he once called our arc trail, and for every promise that turned to ash, the unplugged router, the bare chain, the whispered threat, I snipped a careful line until the mountains looked feathered instead of solid. A busted crown no longer able to keep me. When only the lake remained, blue pencil glimmering like a sliver of mercy, I kissed the scrap, thanked it for holding the memory of the dip where I first tasted freedom, then fed it to the wood stove's dying coals. The paper curled, flashed gold, and drifted up the flue in a hush soft as amen, and with that small bright funeral I felt an iron ring snap open in my chest. Tears came, Lord, they cascaded, but they tasted clean, not bitter. It was the kind of weeping a body does when the splinter finally works its way out and you can press the wound without flinching. That's when I spoke the confession I've swallowed since Ruth Ann's high school graduation. I once packed a suitcase and set it by the dryer, ready to leave Earl after his first jealous fit. But I shoved it back behind the linens because the church potluck needed my lemon bars and I believed good wives endure. Saying it aloud this morning felt like unlocking a room I'd bricked over, and the air rushing and smelled like cedar and new paint and possibility. I won't pretend the hurt is healed. My wrist, blue plum and aching, reminds me each time I reach for this cup, but I've decided pain can ride in the back seat while purpose takes the wheel. When the deputies offered to flag the cabin as evidence, I said no, I'll keep the key. I intend to donate the place to the Blue Ridge Women's Retreat Program. Let these scarred rafters shelter folks rebuilding trust in their own good sense. Maybe they'll plant sunflowers where the bare chain scarred the porch rail. Maybe they'll repaint the shutters robin egg blue. And every season the lake will mirror their steadier faces. As for me, I'll go home to Charleston, hang my choir robe on the bedroom door, and when Miss Eloise at Riverside Chapel asks who'll lead Amazing Grace at Thanksgiving service, I'll raise my bruised hand high, because a voice that has trembled at the edge of oblivion can carry a congregation straight through the valley and up the other side. Earl's future will be stitched by doctors and judges. Mine will be quilted from second chances and pecan pies cooling on the sill for grandchildren who now know Grandma fights back. So here's my vow, spoken into this little tape deck so there's a witness besides the sparrows. I choose to live forward, no grudges fetched, no regrets coddled, just breath after honest breath, the Lord's day by shining day. If the past knocks, I'll open the door, offer it tea, listen respectfully, then show it to the gate before dusk. Honey, I reckon that's the cleanest definition of grace I've got. The right to remember without surrendering, to walk on without dragging every shadow behind. Mercy me, the sun's full up now, first light of the rest of my story, and I aim to meet it standing tall. Oh, honey, I'm back home in Charleston now, kettle whispering steady on the stove, streetlights spilling a gentle gold across my linoleum that no kerosene lamp could match. And as I set this little tape deck beside the sugar bowl, I find myself measuring the hush here against the hush that pressed on my lungs up in those pines. The difference feels like the stretch between a lullaby and a gunshot. Yet the lesson binding them together could slip inside a mustard seed. So lean close while I pour. When I look backward, I see to Julius. The first moved through life just the way old hymnals promise we should, believing kind hearts always circle back and storms know when to quit. The second, who walked down that ridge barefoot in mud and moonlight, understands that love is both flower and thorn, and even Sunday school's sweetness needs a pair of pruning shears. The shift wasn't loud, but it was lasting. Each morning since the deputies drove Earl toward his reckonings, I wake before the city roosters, tie my cardigan and feel for bruises which are fading outside yet blossoming into cautions inside. Then I brew my coffee and ask, out loud, what's tenderness going to look like today, Julia May, and who gets to receive it? Some days the answer is the widow next door who needs her porch ramp swept. Other days it's the woman in the mirror who must quit rereading the what-ifs and start humming the what-nows. What I've learned, sugar, is that instincts are the Lord's early warning bells, not noise to be muffled by politeness. Those little flutters you feel when a joke cuts sharper than it should, when a door shuts heavy, when a silence grows long and sticky, pay them heed the same way you'd heed the smell of smoke in the night. I'm not saying march through life suspicious of every shadow. Mercy me, suspicion is a chalky meal. I'm saying keep one hand on your own good sense while the other stays open for fellowship. That balance is the new porch I stand on, and it feels sturdy under my feet. I've also realized forgiveness isn't a single bouquet you hand out like carnations at Easter. It's a garden needing weeding and watering, and some plots take longer to bloom. I'm willing to tend that ground, but I'm finished planting seeds on soil that refuses the sun. Another truth landed while I was signing the donation papers that will turn that cabin into a retreat for women relearning their steady breath. Safety shared grows stronger roots than safety hoarded. If my week of fear can pave a safer path for someone else, then the bruise was tuition, not tragedy. So here's the heart of it, plain as peach pie. Our memories are either anchors or rudders, and we get to decide which. I've chosen mine to steer me forward, not pin me to yesterday's dock. Maybe it's time you checked which job your own memories are doing, darlin'. Are they keeping your little boat tethered to a pier that no longer serves you, or are they guiding you toward cleaner water? The answer's yours, but don't wait for a bear chain around your ankle to begin asking. Sunrise colors fade quick. Best set sail while the light's still warm. Oh, honey, I'm setting this final reel spinning while the porch light hums over my teacup and the crickets strike up their night shift choir, and I'm picturing you. Yes, you in whatever corner of the country you're seated, leaning in the way my grandbabies do when I fold the quilt edge and whisper, now here's the part that matters most. I want your heart to feel the warmth of mine the way sunrise slips across a window pane in December, because what we've shared isn't just a tale pinned to a mountainside calendar. It's a living ember I'm passing from my weathered hands to yours in hopes you'll bank it for the long dark and maybe light someone else's lantern tomorrow. The Blue Ridge cabin, the paper-thin well, the hiss of rain on tin, those belong to yesterday. But the marrow of the story is today's business, a reminder that every one of us carries a key we didn't know we forged the day we first promised ourselves never to settle for half-lit love. I spent 52 years thinking loyalty meant staying put no matter how crooked the floorboards got, and mercy me, that belief nearly wrote my benediction on a backwoods deed. Turns out love and safety are siblings. If one slips out the door and doesn't come back by supper, the other has no obligation to keep your chair warm. Grasp that, sweet listener, and you'll never confuse endurance with peace again. So what do I want you to feel as the tape clicks toward its tail? A tender courage like the hush right before a choir begins, when lungs fill with enough air to tip the rafters, a sideways melancholy for the years we lose to good intentions, and a steady conviction that daylight belongs to whoever reaches for the latch first. I hope you touch your own wrist, feel that pulse, stubborn and miraculous, and remember you're allowed to guard it with more fierceness than custom dictates. I hope you step outside tonight, sniff the wind for cedar, and ask whose roadmap you're following and whether the destination still fits the size of your soul. And I hope, most of all, that my voice stays with you like a hymn hum soft in traffic, reminding you that a clear memory is a blessing and a cloudy one a warning, and both can steer you true if you honor what they say. Sometimes, in the thin hour before dawn, I catch myself wondering whether Earl lies awake tracing forgiveness on a hospital ceiling, or if the mountain mist still curls through his thoughts as regret curls around mine. I may never learn the shape of his remembering, but I like to believe on kind nights that a glimmer of the man who once built me a porch swing is looking for his way home. And that dear heart leaves me with a question I'm bold enough to hand you like a cookie still steaming on the sheet. After all we've pondered, Do you believe real love is duty-bound to return, or is it sometimes wiser, braver to let it keep walking down the road it chose? Don't answer out loud just yet. Sit with the unease, feel it stir, and when you've found words that make your pulse tap the tabletop, share them below so we can weigh the taste of your truth. Now hush, the porch light's dimming, the tape is almost out, and the crickets are tuning up for their solo. Whatever else the night brings, remember this: the story you carry next is yours to write, and the pen is already warm in your hand.